Before I get into the main subject, I would like to thank a guy by the name of Greg Klonberg for making this phenomenal picture for my band. Look at this shit, isn't it fucking sexy? You got two babies with deer skulls on their heads and the top half of Reagan McNeil from The Exorcist with their entrails all over the place. I absolutely love this. Thank you for making this shit, man. If anyone would like Greg Klonberg to make art for them, you can contact him on Facebook. You will find a link to his profile in the description. Anyway, on to the main subject. So, there's this shirt that exists. It says these words: "Dear God, why do you allow so much violence in our schools? Signed, a concerned student." Dear concerned student, I'm not allowed in schools. God. There is no quantum of facepalming that could adequately suffice for such stupidity. Okay, I'm an atheist, but I'm going to make critiques on this shirt as if God did exist. Why is there so much violence in schools? People ask similar questions about the Holocaust. Why would God allow the Holocaust to happen if he loves all his children? A theist might say that the deity is simply testing the faith of the inhabitants of Earth. That's not what the shirt said, however. God supposedly said he's not allowed in schools. Of course, God didn't literally say that. However, the human being who inscribed those words believed that he would be speaking the truth. That's a fair assessment, in my opinion. Now, I can assume that the person who wrote that did not think that the presence of God was completely forbidden in schools. I mean, he's supposedly omnipresent. He supposedly exists everywhere at once, and I know that the person didn't think that schools could somehow block his metaphysical presence. I know you're God, the creator of everything, and you operate outside the laws of physics, but your divine presence is not allowed. Sorry, school policy. You're not allowed to be omnipresent. We can control where you are in your metaphysical state, even though we're your creations. I know that the person meant that God was simply disallowed in the sense that he's not allowed to be mentioned. Well, realistically speaking, if God were not allowed in schools in that sense, religious schools would not exist. The human who wrote those words might say that he didn't mean all schools, he only meant public schools. That still would not be correct. I learned about Christianity and world history in 8th grade. I heard all about Jesus Christ and God in public school. God is most certainly not disallowed in public schools. However, the human who wrote those words might say he meant Christianity isn't taught to be true in public schools. So fucking what? That does not deprive people from being religious in schools. Christians, Jews, Muslims, and other people of religious faith can attend public schools. They can believe whatever the fuck they want. They're not being forced to relinquish their faith simply because their religions are not taught to be correct in public schools. The act of not teaching religions to be true is absolutely of no detriment, as students can be taught that their religions are true elsewhere. If students wish to attend schools where their religions are taught to be true, they can attend religious schools that are reserved for their specific religions. That's why religious schools exist. Public schools are melting pots of students of all religions. And even so, religions are mentioned in classes like world history in order for their influence on various countries and cultures to be taught. Perhaps he or she thinks public schools need to teach his or her specific religion to be true, regardless of the faith of the registered students. Perhaps the person who made that shirt would say that he meant that prayer isn't allowed in public schools. Well, prayer is not disallowed. You can sit there in front of your algebra test praying that you get an A on that test. You can pray in your head or aloud, and you will not be punished for it. You can even pray during the moment of silence. By the way, when does the moment of silence occur? It occurs immediately after the Pledge of Allegiance. I wonder if the person who made that shirt ever recited the Pledge of Allegiance in his or her lifetime. If he or she has, then he or she would know very well that the word God is in the Pledge of Allegiance. And this pledge is recited by public schools every morning. It's not required, but it's still recited by many. If God were truly disallowed from schools, explain to me in a logically coherent fashion as to why the Pledge of Allegiance is recited in public schools. Anyway, prayer specifically is certainly not disallowed, but I digress. I have asserted that God in general is not disallowed from schools, but suppose that God were. Would God ever say that disallowing him was a reason why violence occurs in schools? I will say that it is completely possible for a human being to go to an all-Catholic school and massacre 20 children who attend it, even though God is not disallowed from that school. If that occurred, you can say that God was definitely mentioned in that school more than just a few times. However, if the scenario took place, children would be killed nonetheless. So if you analyze this possibility, you will acknowledge that the act of allowing God in a school does absolutely nothing to stop violence from occurring. Also, have you ever heard of Lydia Schatz? She was a 7-year-old girl who lived in a Christian household and was killed by her parents in an attempt to discipline her in the name of God. God was not disallowed in that household, and violence still occurred. So this God character is pretty smart. Would you say that he possesses more than an average quantum of intelligence? He is omniscient, after all. Wouldn't he know that he's not disallowed from schools? And wouldn't he know that even if he was allowed in any conceivable location, violence can still occur? Whoever made that shirt undoubtedly gave his deity a horrendously bad name. I was just browsing through my newsfeed on Facebook, and when I saw this picture, I just absolutely had to critique it. So many idiotic things are being said as a result of this tragic Connecticut shooting, and it truly is shameful as to how much stupidity can exist. Violence occurs because human beings choose to be violent. Some are on drugs, some are insane, some are traumatized, some just have a bad day. Humans make choices to act violently, and sometimes the violence ruins the lives of others or ends the lives of others. If a concerned student ever looked to the sky and asked the deity he or she believed in why that deity allows violence in schools, a more acceptable answer from that deity would be that the deity gave his or her creations free will, and he or she respects that free will so much that he or she refuses to interfere with it. That would be an acceptable answer to me. I'm an atheist, but a deity like that would be okay with me. In conclusion, fuck this shirt. I am the MASSACReature. You're a dragon with wings, so don't stay on the ground.